Welcome to the Cross in the Desert, speaking hope and freedom to Iran. I'm your host, Randy L. Noble. I appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to meet with me on the Cross in the Desert. About 2 years ago, I began writing a book called The Rose of Nowruz, Dreams of Hope and Freedom. It's about the subject of women's rights in the Islamic Republic of Iran. It's the story of a woman freedom fighter named Behera, who, after witnessing the number of situations where her women friends, are discriminated against because they're women, she finally breaks free of her fear and silence and begins the life of an activist in the very dangerous Islamic Republic of Iran. Well, this book, The Rose of Nowruz, really took on a life of its own based on a story that my dear friend who lives in Tehran wrote me one day. I won't mention her name for security reasons, and I know you'll understand. She shared a story one day with me, emailed it to me. It was her own story. It was a really hot, sweltering summer day, and she was riding the bus to university, and of course wearing her hijab, which is the law there in Iran. If you don't wear your hijab properly, you can be arrested and fined by the Ghastar Irshad, that is the morality police who enforce the Islamic dress code every day there in Iran. And she was saying in the story how hot it was in the bus and how the sweat was coming down from her hijab. And here she is, a woman sitting in the back of the bus, and in the front are men laughing and having a good time, reading the newspaper, talking, chatting, texting. And here she is just feeling this enormous heat and sweat and wearing her hijab. And she made a statement that really, really revolutionized this book that I wrote. She said in her story, "Is this what Islam has brought us?" And she was reflecting on sitting in the back of the bus, in a special section for women, wearing her hijab, and feeling the heat of that summer day. Well, this story my friend shared with me actually just became this novel, The Rose of Nowruz. And I owe her so much for her kindness in taking the time to share that story. Since I wrote The Rose of Nowruz, I've had the privilege of sharing it all over the world with human rights groups in both Iran and Canada. I've also sent this book on PDF files to my friends in Iran on the internet. I wrote this book not just for my friends in Iran. They know all about life there, and really to read about it like that is not very comfortable and edifying. They know all about what life is like there. I wrote it primarily to awaken the Western culture outside of Iran who really don't understand the oppression and fear of people there. They don't understand the degrading value of human rights there, the many violations of human rights, the oppression and the discrimination against women in this Islamic culture. Well, this book has opened up so many doors of conversation for me all over the internet, and has also, like I mentioned, awakened so many people to understand what life is like in Iran, especially for a woman. Well, just recently, my friend, the same friend who shared her story that began this book, also has written another story. And it's on the treatment of women in Iran again, but from a little bit different of perspective. What I want to do tonight on the Cross in the Desert, I want to read to you her story. And I want you to hear from her own heart what life is like for a woman living in Iran. I think sometimes when we hear it from them, that we just don't read something in a book, but we hear it directly from them, that it has a more impact on us. It has more of a way of affecting us and helping us to understand what life is like there in Iran. So what I'm going to do right now, I'm going to read you my blog that I just wrote today. You can make some comments about it, but the purpose of this video tonight is to once again educate and awaken you that may not understand what life is like there, but you're going to hear it from my dear friend in just a couple of seconds. As I mentioned 2 years ago, I had the privilege of writing a very special book on the rights of women in Iran entitled The Rose of Nowruz, Dreams of Hope and Freedom. My dear friend, and her name is withheld for security reasons, I'm sure you understand, My dear friend who lives in Tehran shared her powerful stories with me that became the basis of the storyline for my book. Since its publication, The Rose of Nowruz has been read by major human rights groups in both Iran and Canada, including my dear friends who live in the heart of the Islamic Republic. Just recently, I asked my Iranian friend to write a short, personal reflection on the treatment of women in Iran, and she happily agreed. I want you to hear, word for word, her feelings and convictions. My Iranian friend is an English teacher and has an amazing gift of describing from her heart the way of life in the Islamic Republic of Iran. The following short paragraph is her latest story, reflecting on the treatment of women in Iran. Quote, security. The word sounds familiar to many people around the world, but for me, that's not tangible. I would love to feel it one day if I get the chance, and I hope no woman in the world feels the insecurity I'm coping with here. Everywhere else, women are praised for their beauty, all their sacrifices they do for their family, and for bringing life into the world. But here, when it comes to women, there are no rights, no values. Women are things which must be used. The worst thing about this inequality is that you have to feel it every day from the bottom of your heart. The simplest example that I can mention is standing at the street corner waiting for a taxi. Just because of standing there, every cab driver or motorcyclist feels free to honk the horn, stop next to you, and begin flirting with you, saying nasty things to you. It is a reminder that every day you are being treated like an object created to make life full of pleasure for men. It really doesn't matter whether or not you are single or married, well-dressed or not, having a complete hijab or not. What I'm describing happens to every Iranian woman every single day. It is very devastating to experience being watched and harassed from the moment that you leave home until the time that you arrive at your destination. They feel free to whisper whatever dirty and nasty things that they wish. They feel free to comment on your face and body, and even the minute things that you never noticed in the mirror. Narrating and elaborating this issue really makes me sick of being a woman here. I bet you could never tolerate a single day here. Well, did you hear the heart of my friend? And you may say, well, there's sexual harassment here in the United States. That's not just, restricted to Iran. And of course, that's true. But it's more than just the sexual harassment and the treatment of women that is true in every culture. There's something more going on behind the scenes that you need to know. While it is true that in my culture, flirting and harassing of women is a problem, in Iran, it is a way of life resulting from the teachings of the Quran and the Hadith. Now, I don't mean to offend my Muslim friends, but there are statements in the Quran and in the Hadith that need to be mentioned here. And why I'm doing that is because in this culture, my friend is writing from Iran, it's just not sexual harassment and flirting. It's a way of life based on the culture and the teachings of their holy book, the Quran. It's ingrained in them as men as they read and study. Many of my friends would like to say, look, the Quran teaches equality of men and women, so you can't be telling me the truth. You're distorting it, you're taking it out of context, but not the case here. There are explicit statements in the Quran which, when it's taught in a culture like Iran, end up being the situation that my friend is going through. This flirting, this harassing, the way women are treated is a reflection of what they're taught by their own holy book. Well, give me some examples, Randy. Okay. Let me give you the first example that's fairly explicit. In Surah chapter 2, verse 223, it declares, "Your women are your fields, so go into your fields whichever way you like." Did you hear that? The men are taught, your women are your fields, so go into your fields whichever way you like. It's a very sexual, explicit statement. Reflecting back on my friend's description of the harassment and flirting of men, it is now understandable why she is treated this way in everyday life. This verse from the Quran essentially is giving permission for a man to treat his wife in a lewd, sexual, and vulgar way. Now, I know that sounds blasphemous, and I don't mean to hurt or offend anyone, but how else would you interpret and define this statement? Well, that's just one. Another example is in Surah chapter 4, verse 11, talking about inheritance rights. It says, "The share of a male shall be twice that of a female." Well, the Quran is very clearly teaching that when it comes to the issue of inheritance rights, the man seems to be preferred over that of a woman. Another example, outside of the Quran, but contained in the Hadith, that is a collection of the sayings and deeds of the Prophet Muhammad, in Volume 1, Book 6, number 301, and I'm quoting here, this is supposed to be a quotation from Muhammad himself. The Prophet said, quote, "Isn't the witness of a woman equal to half that of a man?" The women said, "Yes." Then he said, that is the Prophet, "That is because of the deficiency of a woman's mind." Well, how do you wrestle with that statement? This is something that Muslims read. I can't say that every single Muslim knows about this, but those that are dedicated to their faith know about the Hadith, and they certainly know about this statement, and how else can you interpret it? Basically, Muhammad is saying here in this statement in the Hadith, if we were to believe that's him, that the testimony of a woman is only half that of a man. And also, it's because she has a deficient mind. Well, that's very discriminatory toward women. And so going back to the story of my friend, you can understand why she feels insecure, why she feels harassed, why she feels looked down upon from a man. Because the teachings of the Quran and Hadith give them that mindset. And a man who is taught and traditioned in that way feels superior to women. You can now clearly feel and understand why my dear Iranian friend suffers from this type of abuse and harassment every day. Her culture has been taught that, quote, men are superior to women and that they are permitted to treat them as a mere sexual object instead of treating them with dignity, honor, and respect. Women are treated like a possession. And men engage in this kind of behavior and treat them as a possession for entertainment. It's based on their culture, their upbringing, the teachings of their books. Now, this is a cultural mindset that my dear friend has to cope with every day. I want to give some light in the darkness, though. I want to give some fresh air, if you will. In contrast to the Quran, the Bible portrays women. In contrast, the Bible will say that women are treated with dignity and respect as image bearers of God. Women were treated by compassion and respect during Jesus' earthly ministry. Now, in the Jewish culture, much like in the Iranian culture, women were not viewed as equality. Women were viewed second class according to men in the Jewish culture. When Jesus came on the scene, he put women back in their proper place, treating them with respect and dignity, and rebuked the Jewish culture for their treatment of women. And so we see, therefore, in the Judeo-Christian worldview, women are supposedly treated, according to the Bible, with dignity, honor, and respect. Now, in saying that, you certainly have many, many examples in history, in both present day, where men don't adhere to the teachings of Scripture, and men disobey God by treating women as second-class citizens. So what I'm saying is, the Bible teaches an accurate view of women, and men, if they don't submit to the teachings of Scripture, will treat women the same way they're treated in Iran, and all over the world in the Muslim worldview. So what we see in the Bible is something diametrically different than the Quran. Let me give you an example here in one of the best ways I can. In the book of Proverbs, chapter 31, Verse 10 is a perfect example of showing high praise to the value and worth of women. The writer, King Lemuel, asks the question, an excellent wife, who can find? And when he says it's hard to find an excellent wife, when you do find her, she is far more precious than jewels. In that same proverb, in verse 25, the writer says of a woman, she is clothed with strength and dignity. And in verse 26, when she speaks her words, her words are wise, and she gives instruction with kindness. When she speaks, her words are wise, and she gives instruction with kindness. The Bible elsewhere says in Ephesians chapter 5 that husbands are to love their wives with a sacrificial love, just like Christ, being willing to die for them if need be, just as Christ loved and died for the church. You too, men, need to esteem women, love them unconditionally, and if need be, give your life for them. That women are valued and respected is very clear in the teachings of Scripture. What a contrast to a portrait of women painted by the Quran and the Hadith. Well, life is hard for women in Iran. They are daily scrutinized by the morality police, making sure they are wearing their hijab properly, and if not, they can be arrested and fined. In my book, I describe this in much more detail. My heart just goes out to my Iranian friend who has to deal with this every day. I want to show you a picture of really the Ghastir Shah, the morality police, confronting a woman. And there you can see the woman in her chador, and she is confronting another woman who doesn't have her hijab on properly. In my book, The Rose of Nowruz, my character is sitting at the bus stop after a hard day at the university. And she's dwelling on the experience that she had earlier in the morning of watching the Ghastir Shah beat a woman physically and take her into the van to arrest her for reacting the way that she did, for being confronted by not wearing her hijab properly. And as Behera is sitting there at the bus stop, she's thinking about the rights of women. She's thinking about women. And she writes this little declaration that I think is very apropos in summing up the story of my friend tonight. This: I am a woman. I am more than just a veil. I am more than what I wear. I am someone. Someone who has the right to speak her mind, the right to be heard, the right to pursue her dreams, the right to be respected, and the right to be treated as an equal. I have the right to live as I choose, the right to pursue my dreams, and the right to be happy. God has given me all of these rights, and no man or government can take these rights away from me. I am a woman, and I proclaim my right to be free. I hope you heard that declaration. You know, this is something so hard for us as Westerners to understand, just what these women suffer through in Iran. And so we have to hear it from someone like an Atefi, someone like my friend who understands the struggle for women and women's rights that live in Iran. I really appreciate you spending this brief time with me and being educated by my dear friend in Tehran and her stories. If you want to be my friend on Facebook, come to my Facebook page, Randy L. Noble, and friend request me, and I'll be glad to be your friend. And on my page you'll see lots of issues about human rights in Iran, and I hope you'll take the time to read them and to be educated and to think about being a voice of hope for them that are suffering so much in Iran. I want to say so much appreciate your time spending with me. This has been a special broadcast of The Cross in the Desert. I want you to have an incredible week. God bless you. And I will see you next time speaking hope and freedom to Iran on The Cross in the Desert. Good night, and God bless you.